Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I'm Derek Lambert, and I am joined by Brittney Hartley. Welcome, Britt.
So happy to be here, and so soon. This is so lovely to see you again so soon.
I know, like, we really had a heck of an episode, if you ask me. I mean, it was really a deep conversation.
It didn't resonate with everyone, and that's okay, but we both loved it. And so I'm super happy with our last conversation.
I am too. We've been through quite a lot in our lives and trying to figure out what the answers seem to be. And there's all sorts of paths we've taken, and other people, I think, who can relate, will relate. And then some people may not have that kind of interest in being flexible on ideas or even thinking about some of these things. And that's okay too. I'm out here, just in case anyone's watching this going, what the heck's going on? I'm in my mother-in-law's backyard near the pool. We're starting a little earlier today, thankfully, because I won't have to stick around and become a popsicle. I do have a blanket in case I need to, warm up. But before we go into the topic, which is about hell, and everybody, I think, has an idea of what that is, I do want to mention your website and your YouTube channel. So make sure, let me know you're seeing it if it is coming up.
There it is.
Okay.
So yeah, my website has courses on there, and currently I'm not doing coaching because I am writing my dissertation in open and relational theology. So I'm taking a break from coaching, but there's resources and links to my book, No Nonsense Spirituality, which is still in the top 5 books for atheism, even 2 years later now. I'm super proud of that book. Courses on there, and then the YouTube channel, which I just started in the past year, and trying to get that going. And YouTube's tough. I'm still trying to figure it out. I got my start on TikTok, so I'm still trying to figure out YouTube.
Wow. Oh, I hope people will go subscribe. The links are in the description for websites, YouTube channel, the whole 9. And you're trying to grow. So if I'm laggy, bear with me here. I am outside, and I feel like I'm laggy on my end. So
the video's a little laggy, but the audio is pretty clear. So I think we can just, we can still run through it.
Awesome. So you have, I guess, a special treat everybody's going to enjoy, I think.
I hope so. If you're someone who has struggled with fear of hell, this is the episode for you. This is a topic that Derek said, hey, do you want to talk about hell a little bit, not just from like the scholarly perspective, but also from the work that I do as a spiritual director, which is a 2-year certification program after my master's degree in theology. Or if you were to go to like a religious deconstruction coach, what does it look like to work with someone over this concept of fear of hell, not just like going into the scriptures of the concept of hell, but actually how to overcome your fear of hell so that it's not causing you any angst anymore. And so I thought I would just kind of take you through what I would do with a client, all the aspects of this, of what it is like to take someone who is having nightly, nightmares about hell, very scared to move forward because they feel like if they keep going in their deconstruction, they're going to hell. I get this question every day on my social media. How do I know that I'm not going to hell? This really deep fear. So I'm just going to take you through kind of what I would do with a client if they're showing up like that. And then just would love to hear like your feedback and what resonates with you kind of as we go.
Absolutely.
All right, ready? Everybody in the super chat ready? And then if you have questions in the super chat as I go, someone says they're in hell if we have any questions, which I think is a funny comment. We got to give that one. Yeah, that's a funny comment. You got to put that up there. So questions as I go is great. And I'm just going to go through what I would do with a client if you showed up on, in my office with a fear of hell. Now, for me personally, just so you know, I was raised Mormon, and we have a different concept of hell that isn't quite so fire and brimstone. So this isn't something personally that I had to really work through. There was other things that I had to work through. And by the time I got to like my time in Christianity, I was doing open and relational theology, which kind of doesn't do any of that fundamentalist Christian hell stuff. So this wasn't one that I had a lot of personal experience with, but one that I deal with daily as a religious deconstruction coach and spiritual director. All right, ready? So
ready.
The first thing that I would do, and there's a reason that I do this, it's not just to nerd out, is kind of go over a little bit of history of hell with the person who is struggling with it. And the reason that I do it is not to turn them into a historian. They may not really care about the Bible and the concept of hell. The only thing that I want to introduce to them is that this concept is very complex. There's not this like one unanimous belief on the concept of hell, and that'll just give us a little bit of space as we move forward in the process. So the first thing that I would do, and I would imagine most listeners on your channel already know this because you have scholars on here quite a bit, but you know, in the Old Testament, we don't have a very strong concept of heaven and hell. We have this place in early Hebrew texts called Sheol. It's a shadowy, neutral place. Everyone goes there. There's not moral distinctions in the afterlife, and there's just not really anything happening here. And so in the Old Testament, we have most of the blessings or cursings tied to this, like, not only like this life, but also the land that you're on. So long life, fertility, material prosperity, even Job. It's not that Job loses everything and gets it all in the next life. He's blessed in this life for his, you know, faith and righteousness, while, you know, God and Satan are playing their little games with him. And so in the Old Testament, we really don't have a concept of anything going on in the afterlife. And all the blessings and the cursings were in this life on this land that you're on. And then once we hit, you know, the kingdom of Judah being captured by the Babylonians and the temple being destroyed, that created a huge theological crisis because it didn't work. God didn't protect them. They weren't being rewarded in this life. Their God was defeated by other gods. So where was God's justice if the righteous were suffering so much and are in captivity? And so that's when we start to get this concept of, well, maybe justice and blessings happen in the next life because we got conquered and our temple got destroyed. And that is a huge theological problem if you believe that you're the chosen people and you believe that God's going to bless you and punish you. So this starts to get mixed in with Zoroastrian ideas, Persian ideas of, you know, the afterlife. There may be some Greek influences here about the soul. But what starts to happen is we start to get whispers of stuff happening in the afterlife for the first time. And so one of the best examples of that is Daniel 12, where it says, multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. And that's our clearest scripture on this emerging theory. So by the time we get to Jesus, there's not even consensus at this time. You have the Pharisees, who are more likely to embrace resurrection and judgment. The Sadducees are more conservative. They didn't develop strong afterlife themes. You have like Greek concepts and Hades and stuff going on. You have Persian influences. You have it's a debate. And so there's better scholars that you've had on your channel that can go through all the scriptures and emerging theories and the doctrinal debates. The only point in going through this with the client is to show, hey, this is complex. There's no clear doctrine of hell. If we open your scriptures, it does not say, you know, you, the person, are going, like, if you keep deconstructing church, you're going to go to hell. What you see is a process of a process of a conquered people trying to find justice. Now, if you want my personal take on Jesus and hell, I personally, because I have experience in a wisdom tradition, I have a Sufi teacher that I've worked with for a long time as part of studying mysticism. Let me finish this and then I'll let you know what you think, or I'll ask you what you think. My personal take is I see a lot of mysticism in Jesus, and with mystic teachers, you get a lot of pointing to an internal world rather than kind of an external place. And so we get a lot of these really cool statements from the Gospel of Thomas, which is my favorite book of scripture. It's the most contemplative text that we have of Jesus. It didn't make it into the Bible. And in Psalm 51, it says, his disciples said unto him, when will the rest for the dead take place, and when will the new world come? And he says, what you are looking forward to has already come, but you don't know it. And he talks about this idea of kingdom of heaven within, very mystical teachings, very classic mystical approach to spirituality. And so again, like, going through this with a client is just showing them, hey, there's a lot of more complexity here than this idea that you were told that hell is for sure the solid concept in the Bible, and if you do XYZ, you for sure are going there forever. If I can just show them that it's more complex than that, it can give us a little room to work. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, I have tons of thoughts, but I would say, and I hope my audio is coming through okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I started thinking I might need to refresh my computer even in the middle of a friggin' live stream just because it's so laggy for me. But 100%, there's not a univocal message pertaining to hell. There's different ideas, it seems, different concepts that are going on. And I know that there's a lot of people. One of the things I try to do is help them detach from the text. Like I have a friend I grew up with who was always closeted. He was gay, and he obviously had to suppress this in the kind of circles that we were in because those people go to hell. And we believed this very firmly. Once we're all adults, he marries, and he's like, well, I found out, he told me, the Bible doesn't condemn it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, like whoever's interpreting these texts, if you go to Leviticus, you could walk away from Leviticus and go, okay, guy with a guy. Like he needs an interpretation to confirm so that he doesn't feel like he can't let go of the text. That to me is so problematic because interpretations, of course, you could say, well, I got a really good scholarly approach. And I say, I'm pretty convinced this is pederasty, or this is, whatever I don't want to say excuse to be like nonchalant, like it doesn't maybe have that indication, but it's like, if you were to approach these ancient people with this lifestyle, what would they have said? How would they have viewed this lifestyle in their period if we came back 2,000 years? Would they just go, oh, no, you're cool. Yeah. Guys and girls, go ahead. Or would he have been like, that goes against nature according to their perception? And so like, I just want to say, like, I think it's important what you're saying is just like, there's not one message, which should cause a little bit of confusion for any like person who's not clinging for dear life to these texts to go, well, hold on. If there's not a clear message, like you brought up the sayings of Thomas, which I always enjoy too. And that one right there is realized eschatology, as they call it. Like this is internal spiritualization. But I could point to other texts that seem to point toward an expectation of the real world stuff. And it's like, well, I guess we should just be cherry pickers, and pick what we like. And
right. And so you're totally right that we don't want to, especially in religious deconstruction coaching, we don't want to spend the rest of our lives and that's a trap that people fall into. And like, so you're great for bringing this up. The trap that some people will say is like, people will ask me, hey, I have like a degree in theology, just tell me like what hell is, or like just tell me what the Bible says about XYZ. And it's like, if like you're still trying to figure out what the text says about reality so that you can build your life, and the only answer that you're going to get from that is it's complex. And so you're right that we have to pull back from our dependence of having to say like, what clear message do we get from the text? We get messages from the text. Do we get clear univocal messages from the text? No, we don't. And so the only point in going through this with a client is just to like, especially because most of them are people who don't have, degrees in studying scripture, they just know about from their pastor. That's all they know. And so if I show them at least in the scriptures, at the very least, I can say it's complex, then it just gives us some space. It gives us some permission for this person who's still in their deconstruction, right? Like there still may be things that they love about Jesus, for example, that they're not wanting to deconstruct from or whatever, because it's not ethical for me to push someone's beliefs when I'm in this coaching setting. And so, yeah, the only reason to go through the text is not because we're building our life on the text, because we're trying to pull away from that. It's to show, hey, it's complex, which means we have some room to move. And then we can start these other processes. So that's great that you brought that up.
I agree. And I think harm reduction, right? Like what is the best path? And if that's meeting them where they're at and saying, hey, so you have a dependency upon this text and you thought it's just this one story, one text, one meaning. It's not. And let me help you to see that. That does create kind of like a, well, hold on, then which is it? And it's like, now we could start.
Yeah, I don't have to. Yeah, and the great thing is, like, I don't have the answers to that. I tell them if they ask me. I don't have the answers to that, but that means, yeah, like you said, like, it just gives us space to say, oh, there's more room here than pastor threatening me with hell. And he's up there with his Bible. It seems like it's coming from the Bible. There's more here than I thought. That gives me some room to move a little bit.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Okay, so after we do that, we've gotten just like a little bit of space. We're using the text, that they're most familiar with. Now we start going into, rather than just deconstructing logically this concept of hell, we have to do the emotional work. And this is the part where, especially kind of like the religious podcast world, will kind of stop. And it seems like there's a lot of podcasts on the development and the history of hell, and you can nerd out and you listen to Dan McClellan types, and you can go wild with all of that. But I have people who 10 years later, they're full-on atheists. They don't rationally believe in hell. They're still having nightmares. They still will have a fear when someone dies. It will still show up for them emotionally. And so actually the bigger part of this work is rewiring your brain, working with this fear, a lot of emotional work, because this was pre-rational. You probably got these beliefs handed down to you when you were a child, and they are wired as fear memories. And so just logically going through the history of hell historically is not going to be enough for your brain to just be like, oh, I'm totally done. I never think about my fear of hell again. Usually the emotional side takes more time than the logical side. The logical, rational piece of just saying who the hell knows, because these scriptures are just like really contradictory and it's all over the place. That part's actually easy. It's really easy to get through that part. The emotional work is where you're actually having to rewire your brain. So what that looks like is, first of all, just knowing when they got these beliefs as a child, and we really go back to how it was presented to them as a child, because we have your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that's handling the rational belief. We can go through that fairly quickly when you do the history, but the amygdala is where it stores your fear memories. And so you'll have this, I have it with clients all the time, where rationally they really don't think that there's a God that's going to throw them in hell for leaving their church, but emotionally their body is acting like they do believe that. And they're kind of split-brained in that way, which makes sense because these are two different parts of the brain. We can't actually erase a fear memory. We have to create new neural pathways, and that's where the real work is. And so one of the first things that we do is we will re-encode these symbols. So the brain doesn't stay afraid of something that it learns how to play with. And so we're going to actually, in your brain, we'll bring up whatever the imagery was when you were a child. Let's say that it's fire, or let's say that it's Jesus coming down and it's earthquakes, whatever that imagery was. And we're going to actually move your brain into a new thought there. And so here's an example that I keep on my wall. This is, if you can see, this is Velociraptor in the Velocirapture. And it's just something silly. It's so silly. And yet it is actually very effective for your brain to take something like fire, for example, that feels really scary in your body, and take that and imagine it as a fireplace at, in the winter, and you have a cup of hot coffee and you remind yourself you have this one life and these precious moments, and you just move that fire image into something really beautiful or something really funny or something really playful, because we need to make some new associations to those fear symbols that you got before you even had words. So we'll do some of that work to see what symbols we're working with. Another thing that we'll do is just inner child work in general. It sounds schizophrenic. We don't do this with teenagers. We only do this in adulthood. You have to have kind of more of a solid sense of self to do inner child work and shadow work. But you really remember and bring up in your memories, because your brain has a hard time of knowing what's real and what's not, and we use this to our advantage. And it's very effective. In fact, there's some studies I saw out of Germany that showed that narcissists, really hard to work with in therapy. But if you can talk to the child who had to put on the narcissistic personality, you can actually get them headway with even narcissists. So it's really powerful work. You imagine the child who was scared of hell, who was scared of losing their family, whatever it was. And you as an adult become a parent in that situation. Hey, that wasn't okay. Hey, come here, and you give yourself a little hug. And you do lots of visualization work to remember times that you were taught this as a child, and you reparent yourself. Another really powerful exercise is to write a letter to yourself with your right hand or your dominant hand, and then have your inner child who was afraid of this write back with your non-dominant hand, and it looks like a child writing. It's also working with different parts of your brain, and you just kind of have a conversation, and it can help your brain realize that this fear memory is not real, is not accurate. I can let this go, and your brain can start to process that so that those neural pathways aren't showing up for you anymore. You can also do some people do EMDR. I'm not a therapist, so that would be outside of what I'm qualified to do. That's especially for if you're having nightmares and panic attacks. You might go the EMDR route and do similar work. Another thing is dream work. I'm curious, have you ever done anything with dreams? Are you curious about that? Did you get into that at all?
I haven't done anything with them, but I could see why they could be impactful. I mean, I've had dreams that I thought were so real and so profound, and then woke up and was like, damn. It'll even set you on a new path. It can change, people's lives. So yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of dream work. It's something that earlier on in my angry atheism, I would have been that's gonna feel like bullshit. But in the past few years, one of the reasons that I don't do psychedelics as much is because I got better at dream work. And not as a magical, I'm very skeptical. If people remember from my last episode that I did on here, I'm very skeptical. So I'm doing this at the level of the brain. I don't, for example, believe that my soul went to some spirit place or something like that. But hell shows up in dreams for a lot of people who are religious deconstructing. And so we'll practice what's called lucid dreaming, where we'll go into your dream, either in a guided meditation or when you're about to go to sleep or when you first wake up, and start to have the dream go in another direction. So if you are, for example, if you frequently dream of fire or being trapped in a dark place, then you will visualize yourself, finding a door and finding an exit. And you're actually kind of working with your subconscious so that there's not such a disconnect between your rational, sober, awake mind and your emotional dream mind. And we start to kind of put those things together. So dream work is really interesting to me. It's something that I've gotten into the past few years. I did a year-long course with This Jungian Life group. Anyway, that's another rabbit hole for another day. And then big thing that we need to do is new rituals. So rather than being driven by fear and constant reminders of hell and heaven, we need new motivators, new thoughts, new rituals. And this is really effective because where I see the most people get stuck as a religious deconstruction coach is you've deconstructed everything, but you haven't given your brain any new thoughts. And so your brain has nothing to do except for just go through your old neural pathways. What about hell? What about this? What about that? And and you have all of your old scaffolding, but you don't have those beliefs anymore, but you haven't created a new brain yet. And that is the heart of the work in religious deconstruction. That's where reconstructing is a lot harder and takes a lot more effort than the deconstruction, even though deconstructing is hard, and you'll have a lot of deaths in that process, and it's very painful. It can be really painful to lose community. It can be really painful to lose God. There's a lot of pain there, but reconstructing a new brain is hard work. And that's where I wish there was more, more my beef with the religious deconstruction community is sometimes we spend too much time talking about how much religion sucks. And in many ways, they're not wrong. It's just like it's like reconstructing needs a lot more work too than just saying religion is wrong. So new rituals looks like identifying your core values, identifying what inherently feels meaningful and purposeful for you, putting quotes around, putting images around. Who are your saints? You know, people that you look up to as heroes that you want to be like. What are the ways that you ground yourself? What are the daily, weekly rituals that you have? What are the family rituals that you have? What is your family culture like? And that's what I do with secular spirituality, is I look at what religion did that was helpful for us psychologically and socially, and how can we get these tools into your life so you're psychologically grounded, so you have all the psychological benefits of religion, but I'm not asking you to believe anything that you don't believe.
God, I love that. I do love that. I have to just say, because I do think it's easy to point out how wrong some shit is in the Bible, okay? It's really
and it's
easy
fun. Like, it's addicting. So it's so fun.
It is. And it's so easy. And it's like, whoa. And you do feel a bit like, yeah, I figured out some crazy stuff that you're deconstructing the text that was once so sacred and so perfect. But then, there is a part of you, and this is what I guess I would like to say to my ex-religious friends who might watch, when an apologist, and trust me, there's so much engagement that goes on, tension between the community of apologists who want to weaponize and argue, monopolize meaning, ethics, every little thing, every category, as if without us, you don't have it. And I always say to the people who are out there, like, look, do you understand that their ethics they have adopted from prior cultures that weren't them? So, like, don't let that bother you that we may have picked up some ethics from the cultures that were dominant. No, duh. That's not a win. That's not like a haha. But I think, like you said, if we can find the psychological tools that come from that we evolved, which is part of why I think religion even existed for humans, and we're able to utilize that, learn what those are, absorb those, and give them a new package in a whole nother way, without the superstition, without the dogma, without all the nonsense. That's one of the things that brings me back to our first conversation, just to say, like, I'm not so pessimistic. I think we can unravel these things and maybe figure them out, hopefully, and still be able to utilize them and find good and value in them. We're in such a culture war, though, that it's hard to see a past the horizon. And I think that we hopefully, as humans all together, can go over the horizon without being so caught up.
No, you're right. Like, we have to spend so much time just like in our country right now combating Christian nationalism that we almost just don't have time to be able to talk about rebuilding all these things, because we just spend all of our time just trying to pull back on, really what is Christian nationalism. So that brings me to like a fantastic point, which is the piece that I feel like is missing in all of this that we talked about in our last conversation is this piece of atheists sometimes being too dismissive, that like hell is just used by powerful people to keep people scared and keep people in line. I hear that argument. Or all religion is just bullshit, right? We get that a lot from the atheist community. And really the question should be, what is it about humans that we create heavens and hells? Not just in Christianity. I mean, we seem to do this across the board. We have concepts of justice in the next life. Why do we do this as humans? What function is this serving psychologically, and how do we replace it? And so really the root of why we're doing this at all, and I would do this at the beginning of seeing this client, is whether it's reincarnation or nirvana or heaven and hell, or if it's Mormons, we have these 3 versions of hell and we get all crazy. Whatever it is, the root of this is this disconnect that we have as humans, where we feel like there should be justice. We have an inner sense of justice that as early as 9 months old in human babies, we can see that they have a moral compass. If you play with puppets and one of them really mean bad, they don't play with that one. They'll pick with the one that that's nice. As early as 9 months, right? So pre-verbal, we already have a sense of justice. And yet the world is so incredibly unjust that most of the world is randomness and nepotism, and the good guy loses and the bad guy wins and the big guy crushes the little guy. And such a disconnect that our brain creates ways to make that make sense. And so we do that with hell. We do that with heaven. We do that with reincarnation. We do that with all kinds of things because it's so painful to just have this sense that things should be fair. And that's not just humans. Primates have this too. There's tons of videos showing if two monkeys, primates, whatever, do the same amount of work and you give one a better treat than the other, they'll throw a fit. They'll throw an absolute fit because it's unfair. And so we have this sense in us that as social primates we developed, this sense that things should be just. And the world is so incredibly chaotic and random and unjust, and people die and good people lose, and it's awful. And this is why we create these systems. And once I get there with a client, I show them how complex the Bible is. I'll show them why humans create heaven and hell. Again, it just gives us a breath to be able to feel a little bit more confident moving forward, that we're not just stepping into eternal fire and brimstone, right? That this is something that humans just seem to do. And that can just help us to understand. So going back to your point, we don't just need to deconstruct hell and have so much fun talking about different scriptures and telling Christians that they're so dumb for believing in hell. That can be really fun. What we actually need to do in the secular world more of is say, oh, it is really hard to live in a world with so much injustice. How do we sit with this better? How do we change this? How do we sit with this? I remember the first time, it was the first awful documentary that I watched after I lost my faith in God. And it was a little boy. I'll never forget it. It's on Netflix and his name was Gabriel Hernandez. And it was a little boy, a little Hispanic boy, and he was tortured and beaten and killed by his parents.
I've seen
and
that.
His whole, oh my God, his whole life tortured by his parents. It fucked me up.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I couldn't do
blaming himself the whole time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
If we keep talking about it, I'm going to burst into tears. It's one of the worst stories that I've ever heard. But what was awful about it too, for me personally, I had like the emotional flu for like a week. I couldn't even get out of bed. I was just crying over this little boy. And it was because it was the first time that I couldn't say, he's at peace. He's with Jesus now. And the parents will be punished. And everything someday is going to be okay. And I couldn't say that for the first time because I lost my belief in God and heavens and hells and all of that. And I just had to sit with the reality that not just one little boy, but millions of children come into this world, experience harshness, and then die. And I was a wreck. This is why we create heavens and hells. That's a big fucking feeling. And it's an awful feeling. It feels terrible. It absolutely fucked me up. And so this is what we need to do more in the secular world, is say, oh, this is what religion was doing psychologically. These are better tools to replace it. Here's how you sit with big emotions. Here's how you let it change you. So it changes how you show up in the world. I'm more likely to, for example, pay more in taxes to make sure that social workers have more money and don't have a million clients that they're burned out or whatever, because I watched this documentary, right? You let it change you, and you let it change how you show up in the world, and you learn how to sit with suffering, and you learn how to do your part in reducing suffering, all of that. If we spent more time on that, that would be better than just talking about how Christian, uses hell for power and fear and all of that. Even though that's true, we also have to see that it was doing something for us psychologically, because that was more pain watching that documentary than I would have had 2 weeks previous when I still kind of believed in God. Do you know what I mean?
I do. By the way, just letting everybody know, we've got a few super chats. Britt, when you're ready to take them, just let me know. But you're right. I just want to make this one additional comment. I did a video not long ago, and I'm working on a script to try and have a polished video where even prior to this justice idea, the justice concept of where good people go, where bad people go, because some of it, they go to the same place, right? So justice doesn't seem fair in this life, like Sheol. And, you know, the natural observations humans made to come up with ideas of hell. There's a book by, I can't remember the name of the book, but there are two German men who are archaeologists, and they ultimately argued, if I'm not mistaken, something to the idea that volcanoes, a volcanic eruption happened somewhere in the northern Mesopotamian region near the Caucasus Mountains, and it was so bad for the locals that saw the catastrophe and the lava and the smell of sulfur and all of that, that the idea of hell, you wouldn't wish this on, you know, maybe you would in the ancient world, some of your worst enemies, but like, you could see why a natural resource that they observed in the real world would create the idea that in the earth, where hell is, the underworld, where the fire would be. I mean, even there is a lake of fire in Egyptian mythology. And I thought, oh, well, there's not a punishing aspect. I just spoke to an Egyptologist who reads the glyphs, literally has deciphered all this stuff, and she's really good. The video's not public yet. It is on, or about to be on, my membership thing. But like, the point is she points out there are like bubbling cauldrons and like descriptions of really bad, like unjust people get punished all the way in ancient Egyptian mythology. So I wonder, with the combination of justice plus the natural world, they're just going, hey, look at the lava, the fire, the gases coming out of the earth. You know, that for me helped me go, hold on. We used to say, you know, Thor with his hammer made that lightning strike, or Zeus, you know. Now we just go, okay, we know a little science now. We know about tectonic plates. We know about, so once you kind of realize the boogeyman isn't really there, and how humans would have constructed these things, that's one step, I think, toward alleviating some of the reality that it's so real. This is a real thing. And then it allows them to process and go, hold on. But there's a lot of other work, because I have a friend, last comment, wrote me 3 years ago. They're trying to leave the religion, right? And they don't like the idea of hell. And they're struggling specifically with Christianity. And of course, they were raised Christians. It's not like every time I bring up, what about Gehenna? You know, what about hell and Islam? Aren't you concerned about Allah? Nah, not at all. And I'm like, so you don't even bat an eye at any other concepts of hell. It's purely the Christian one that you were fed.
But that goes to show that, like, it's not entirely logical, right? Sometimes we treat religion as if every person, like, objectively studied all religions. We get this with apologetics, as if you really studied all religions, studied all the truth claims, and found out, like, that religion, that's the one that's true and all the others are bullshit. It's like, no, you emotionally feel like your religion is true, and then you do apologetics to try to make it rationally work for you. That's how we all do religion. And so, like, even with this health thing, then we can't just treat it rationally, because there's so much going on under the surface. You're afraid of the hell that you were told about as a kid. You're not afraid of the hell that you were never told about, even though there seems to be just as many people who believe in that hell. Emotionally, there, you don't have that, and so you don't even think about it. And so it was really freeing to me, a little bit scary sometimes, but freeing to me, that, like, not only do we create heaven and hell narratives, and that's very common, especially if you need justice in the next life, and we see that with violent religious countries today, that when there is a lot of just injustice and very low social trust, low institutional trust, there's a huge increase in heaven and hell theology, because there's just no justice in this life. So we've got to hold on to something in the next life. And there's this rule in theology school that the better heaven is and the worse hell is in a culture shows how much they're suffering. So, for example, there are indigenous communities where, you know, there's really low poverty, low depression, low, really high kind of well-being, things like that. And they seem to just, when they do afterlife, they seem to just go on, just continue on with nature. You don't really get those stark heaven and hells until, like, this life sucks a lot and you need something to carry you on to the next life. So knowing that humans do that we always find ways to cheat death, find ways to get justice when there is no justice, when we always do virgin births, like if you want to make someone special in a story, Buddha has a virgin birth, Jesus backdates different, his virgin births, like they're different stories. He's in Bethlehem for different reasons. Just knowing that this is what humans do gives you just so much space for deconstruction. And then we do the deep emotional work to be able to rewire your brain that these symbols now don't give you that emotional response. And that's through the inner child work, the working with the symbols, working with dreams, new rituals, new motivations, new rhythms of life, new neural pathways. And then once we go through that, the brain can entirely forget about hell altogether. And I can tell you, I know there's going to be some believers who listen to this who won't believe me, but Jesus started descending out of the sky right now. I really don't, in my body, don't feel any fear. And a lot of Christians assume that just wait till you see Jesus in the sky. You're gonna wish that the rocks were on top of you and all of that, and you'll feel so much fear. And I've done so much emotional work with this that my first thought is curiosity, oh, I was wrong, that's fine. But for me, it's I can honestly say as an atheist, I'll end here and I'll go to the super chat. I can honestly say as an atheist that Jesus on the horizon, that I could tell Jesus that I did my best to live a moral, service-driven life, even when I lost my faith in theology school, trying to get closer to you. And the parable that sticks with me after all of these years is the Good Samaritan, that the Good Samaritan was someone who had the wrong faith. He was a Samaritan. He was not an Israelite. He was not of the covenant people. But he was the one who helped people when they were wounded on the side of the road. And the work that I do now is helping people who are spiritually wounded on the side of the road, whether from dogma or religion or their church, and to tend to them and hopefully rebuild a better life on the other side of religion, and to hold on to spirituality in whatever way that resonates with them. And so I can honestly stand before God with a clear conscience there. And I really don't believe in worshiping a God who would create hells where, I lost my faith, I didn't choose to, and then I burn in hell forever. That's not even a God worth worshiping. I'm not even afraid of that. I'll happily go to the hell if that's the situation, because that's bullshit. There's just no way I would worship a God that would do that. So all of that together, when you do the logical piece of going into the scripture, why do humans do this? The inner child work, ritual work, new neural pathways, all of that. I can get someone who's having panic attacks about hell, even years later after their deconstruction, to finally move on and not feel it in their body at all anymore. And it's a really beautiful process when I get to do that with someone.
That is very, very powerful. And it does take a long time, as you point out, some serious work to get over some of these things for some people. I feel the same way. I guess the difference is, I don't really think that Jesus is ever coming out of the sky. I'm at a place, I guess, in my research that's just, I'm the confidence I have in my historical research and the comparative mythology and all that is I know that's a story. And it's if it did happen though, hypothetically, you're bringing a hypothetical, I'd be yeah, I was wrong. In fact, we have a super chat I think it's worth getting to that actually asks you and me this question. Because these questions always come from believers to people who are skeptical like you and me. I'll go ahead and just bump through these here. Thank you for becoming a member, Mr. Sergeant Smooth, and thank you for being a member, Paisley Circus 2043. Really appreciate that. You'll be getting early access to content and stuff before others, and you get a special symbol next to your name in the chat so you can brag about how cool you are. Okay. Apologetics. This is the first one. Thank you so much for the super chat. I hope you're still sticking around. If Christianity was proven beyond a reasonable doubt to be true, would you accept Christ as your savior and become a Christian as a result?
Yeah, such a good question. I'm curious to hear your answer. So for me, in order to fully worship and consider myself a Christian and bow down, worship God, right? And be that level of Christian, it would have to be true and also good. So what gets stuck in there is people will say, there has to be a God because how else is there, is there life on this planet, some concept of deism or whatever. And I'm like, that may be true, but that doesn't mean necessarily that that God is good. There's a lot of evidence that you can say in the Bible where God is not good, where God is petty and being a little bitch about stuff. And so just like, if there is a reality where there's a God more powerful than me that's just playing with us and flooding us, when he has a tantrum, and that's truth, that is reality, that is the core reality, that doesn't automatically mean worship for me. If there's some way where there's just a lot of things that I don't understand, where this life is more good than I realize, some eternal whatever that I don't quite understand, then I'd be more open to the concept. But for me, truth and goodness, you can't just lump those two together automatically. So truth is not enough for me to worship a God. And for me, I didn't find enough evidence in the Bible or in personal experience or just looking around at the world. Like, I just fully believe that it shouldn't have been this bad. There shouldn't be this much unnecessary suffering. You have millions of years of animals eating each other alive in absolute pain and suffering, and then 300,000 years of humans suffering and dying and being confused and don't know what germs are, just die randomly. So much suffering, so much confusion, so that at the end of all of that, some people know about Jesus. Like, to me, it still doesn't, even if it was true, it's not good enough. And that was, for me, my journey as someone who dabbled in Christian apologetics, was that I created, I'm not just like an atheist in my ivory tower here. Like, I was in the trenches doing Christian apologetics, especially in open and relational theology. And I built this complex system of how God could be working here and how it could be all okay. But when I take a step back and say, is it good enough? My answer is no. It's not good enough for me. So it would have to be true and good. And until I see evidence of that, then I don't worship God.
Yeah, I think you're dividing the question up, right? And like, this is such a hypothetical mind game, and I'm trying to be as honest and take it as a sincere, as if it was true. I'd have to really nail down what they mean by what they mean by Christianity, because, let's just take what you just said, right? And we find out that there was a demiurge that was evil, and it mapped on to what we find in the Bible, and the Gnostics were on the right track. Okay.
Yeah.
And they said, listen, there was some theodicy that, was beyond, like, yes, this is suffering, but we really think this is so bad until we actually enter into the blissful, whatever it might be. Okay. Maybe we're just so limited and don't get it, but like, I would still then be able to at least point to the maker of some of this shit you just described and go, that's evil. Okay, we Gnostics agree that's evil. If it was proven that form of Christianity that mapped onto reality and it made sense that all this evil was really done by an evil God, and there was a good God above Jesus, which I think is problematic already, but like, I'm trying to play the hypothetical here. Obviously, I would like to answer this question, say this way. If we found out Jesus was somehow beyond reasonable doubt really the Son of God, there was a God above him, I would accept the fact that, yes, that's true. It's not like I would deny the facts if the evidence seemed to point that way.
For
the
sure.
The question is that, would you still follow a deity at that point? I'd have questions, and I'd be like, okay, if we're playing hypothetical, I'd be like, well, why can't I hypothetically ask him why the problem of evil can't be? What is the solution to it? Because you've got to give me something really good, because this is not an easy thing to hurdle. Like, you've really got to give me something here, because if it's so beyond reasonable doubt, it should be something we could walk up, get the answers for, the same way he should be able to answer the solution of this problem. And it's just difficult for me to even be able to know how to answer that in reality. I would accept the facts.
Yeah, I accept the facts.
Yeah.
But then that's where you get into anti-theism, where it's like, even if your God was real, when we talk about like the classic God of theism and the God that's showing up in the Bible, even if that God was real, I wouldn't worship that God. And that's what we call it. Not atheism, anti-theism, which is, even if you're right, it's not fucking good enough. Like
Right.
it should have been better than this. Like there's just so much unnecessary suffering that has no salvific purpose. What moral lesson do animals learn for millions of years of just eating each other alive? What was the moral lesson there? You know what I mean? That, like,
I do.
there's just not, it's just wasn't, to me, it just wasn't good enough. And another story that's really interesting to me, you'll really like this, is like when you consider the hells of other religions, there's this great story that comes to us from Hinduism. I forget which of the Veda, I forget which one it's in, but a father is taken to hell and shown that his family is there. Their version of whatever hell was, and says, they made some bad choices, but you get to go to heaven. So let's, get on the train and get going here. And he stays with his family in hell and says, the right thing to do is stay here with my family and not abandon my family. And the whole family then gets to take the train and go to heaven. And so it's really interesting.
Cool.
I love that story because it's like Christians all the time get to say, like, you're going to hell, you're going to hell. And almost in this like vindictive way, like, I can't wait to see you, that I'm going to be right. This goes back to Tertullian. He said the best part of being in heaven is standing on the edge of heaven and getting to look at the suffering of the damned. There's this anger and this vindictiveness, right? That you can get really addicted to. And so I love that Hindu. I love that Hindu story because it says, like, why are we worshiping God? Why wouldn't you stay, with your people that are good, your family in hell? Like, why are you feeling this vindictiveness? Maybe that's more about you than something that's, mapping onto reality. It's just, it's so complex here.
First, a couple things, if you don't mind. Stephen Fry, we all know the famous moment. Stephen Fry was asked this question. Let's say you die and it is true and you appear before God. What do you have to say to him?
How dare you?
Yeah. And then he goes, and I love Stephen Fry's work. For those who don't know, he's written a lot on the Greco-Roman myths. He's a classicist, brilliant work. But he brings up the Olympians and he goes, but if I died and I appeared before the Olympians, the 12 Olympians, and they go, hey, welcome, here's Mount Olympus. What's up? You see what's up? He would understand, because he practically puts it in no other words than they're fucked up too. So the world's fucked up because the gods are fucked up. Everybody's fucked up. That goes
back to like Zeus, going back to this question. If Zeus is true, would you accept Zeus as your god? Like, yeah, if Zeus is God and that's reality, I'm going to have to accept it. He's a shit god. He's fucking everything, man, woman, child, beast in the field, everyone. That doesn't mean that I'm going to worship Zeus. And so I do need a little bit more when you go to like the worship side of things. And to me, the story of Christianity, what's good about it, I've looked at, someone said like, oh, you just need to look at Eastern Orthodox. Like I've spent time here, I've looked. To me, none of it can really stand up to the level of suffering that we really see on this earth. And so then it becomes more like a Zeus situation. That may be true. I'm not worshiping it. It's not good.
The other thing you said about Tertullian, I wanted to make a comment on, was simply him standing, on the edge, observing the tortures of those damned. It's so sad because I could imagine, I'm trying to imagine, like if someone stood on the edge and watched someone who spent their whole life, serial killer, doing the worst horrific things we could imagine, right? And going, okay, your behavior was so bad, like, and not forever and ever and ever and ever, like, let's have equal justice for the deeds or whatever it might be. But like, I could see someone going, yeah, that person who did things, no, these are people who never heard of Jesus. These are people who said, sorry, not convinced. I'll take my Asclepius. I'll take my Dionysus. I'll take my normal gods my ancestors worshipped and believe in them. These are people who simply believed different things. It's that simple. And they're like, yeah. And then the other comment I was just going to make real quick about what you said is there's a story with Heracles and Alcestis, and I can't remember her husband, or I can't remember if it's Alcestis and his wife or her husband, but one of them was going to be left in the underworld, and the other one said, I'm going to like they literally did an atonement, so to speak. They died so their loved one could come back. And when they did, their loved one came back in the story. It's a love story. And Heracles in the story has power, like Jesus raising Lazarus, and he raises the loved one who ended up doing the self-sacrificial kind of for that person I love so much. I'm going to die for them so they can come back from the underworld. And sure enough, they then get granted the same thing by willing to go that route.
Yeah, that's a whole nother day we could do, because like anything you see in Christianity, when you get to the root of it, you see how humans do this behavior in other ways. So atonement is not something that like Christianity has a monopoly on. Like when we look at, for example, the virgins that we put in volcanoes, some of them are very well preserved. These children, we know what was in their stomach. We know what they ate. They had like sometimes coca leaves to help them. And we would like, anytime we have this deep evolutionary thing, anytime we need to like reset the vibes of the community, we kind of put all of our angst or sins or, you know, whatever is going on onto something else and sacrifice it to make the gods happy, to reset the vibe. And it's a community ritual that actually has a lot of power in community bonding. And so we've been putting animals out into the desert or putting virgins in volcanoes. We've been doing atonement type things for a long time as a way to reset guilt, because we don't know what to do with this feeling. It goes down to the psychology thing of like, what do we do with this feeling of we think we're doing something wrong and there's this big storm, we think the gods are mad at us. What can we do here, you know? And so once we get to the root, this is where my faith started to fall apart so quickly, is once I opened that door to what is psychologically happening here and how do humans do this behavior across the board, it was absolutely devastating to my Christian faith and theology school.
Powerful. Thanks for the question. We wanted to really nail that. I think it's an important one. Matthew Bernier, forgive me if I butchered your name. I learn a lot from this channel. Good stuff. Thank you. We try to bring educational material and personal stuff too. It's not just like, you know, people would go, oh, it's an academic channel, but then I have deconversion stories. Then I have like personal talks and connecting with people, and we do it all. We do all sorts of stuff. DJ Wilkins, by the way, is going to be sharing his story in a week's time from now, his deconversion, roughly a week's time from now. So be staying tuned. Any thoughts on religious non-realism or religious fictionalism and them having a place in Reconstruction?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on this. So I think what he's referring to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is this idea that doing religion, knowing that it's play, knowing that it's not real, but participating in rituals. I think, for example, witches do this really well. There's a pretty big growing group of especially young women who are leaving Christianity, who don't think that the rituals are capital R real when it comes to pagan rituals, seasonal rituals, spell work, things like that. I don't think it's capital R real, but it's a way to play. And in that play, you can get some of the benefits of religion without getting to the dogma. So I think this really works individually for people who really like the play aspect and not get sucked into the dogma. What seems to happen is as something grows, there's been religions or cults or groups that started out saying like, this isn't real, we're just playing. There's something about human nature, though, that we just start thinking, no, it is real. It is real. Like our biases start to play into it. So, for example, astrology, someone may start going down astrology, not thinking that it's capital R real, but using it as a way to do some inner work. And then once they start getting into it, your bias starts to interpret reality into, you know, what you're doing with your astrology work. And then you start to think, oh, actually, I think this is capital R real. And so there's just something about human biases and human tendencies to cult that this approach, fantastic for individuals, fantastic for small groups that can handle it, not something that's sustainable on a large scale. Yeah. So it seems to be the case that we either cult too much or cult too little, in the sense that like we can't seem to just have a church building on the corner where we help each other and there's community and we teach each other how to be good people and we, you know, do hero stories and we sing songs together and it's great. It's either like too much on the fundamentalist side, or not enough of that binding dogma and not enough of that shared myth to bring people together, that it just fails. So we can't seem to get that happy medium where we can kind of play religion and get the community benefits of that. For example, there's a lot of psychology work on really the benefit for an adolescent brain to go through a rite of passage. But it's really hard. We either do that in religion or in secularism. We just tend to not do that at all. And so again, like, this is a place where individuals who want to do this and can stay away from the dogma and be really aware of their biases can do this fantastically. It just never seems to work on a large scale because humans just start getting into their biases, and then it's another religion again.
It's weird because for me, as someone who's deconstructed, I have hobbies and they fill in a lot of that space that I once had that was more like religiously driven. I play video games. I will watch fictional shows on TV. Now we're rocking the Netflix shows, getting into the new Game of Thrones series, checking out the, like, I am nerding out on fiction and I love it. And of course, when I'm watching it, I know logically, consciously, it's bullshit, like in the literal sense, but I play make believe when I watch the show, and I never get to, oh, I somehow now I'm convinced that dragons really are flying around, and like, no.
Yeah.
But I feel like I don't like to play with fire and potentially get burnt like you're describing. And I just like recommend finding hobbies that are interesting. For me, studying the very thing that I've detached from so deeply, I can't logically believe it. Okay. I just can't buy into this happened with everything that I've learned. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I just can't plausibly see this as true. But I could see in a mythical story or in some like narrative sense why legend is even there. And I have fun nerding out on dissecting this stuff. So that's my personal opinion on what
let me have a question for you then.
Yeah.
A lot of people who deconstruct, like, they can do things like Lord of the Rings and get into it and even go like to Comic-Con, which is almost like a pilgrimage, or they can like, I think in 2005, the Jedi Order, like they registered to be a religion, even though they know, but they still like to play in this world, and it gives them meaning and purpose and community and ritual, right and wrong, good and evil. Like, they get a lot of the benefits. My question, I see that happening. Where I see a lot of people get scared is going into the imaginal world. So for example, one easy one is like, let's say you have some kind of problem. You go into a guided meditation. You imagine a room of all the wise people that you've ever met, fictional or real people. Who would you most want to talk to? You want to talk to Dumbledore, Yoda, doesn't matter. It could be real, it could be not. And you really imagine it. You sit down, what coffee are they drinking? You explain your problem, and then you give space and allow that person to kind of talk back to you, because you're projecting your own wisdom onto this person. And what would this person say, right? Now, when you're in the meditation, you're really doing it as if you're talking to this person. You're kind of, it's almost like you logically know that you're not talking to Dumbledore, but you're stepping into a space where it's not real, but I'm going to go play in this space, in this imaginal space. I'm going to imagine I'm talking to a person. I'm going to imagine I'm talking to saints. I'm going to imagine, I've done a guided meditation before with my mystic teacher where you imagine yourself as a tree and then see what comes up and what that means about you, and you play in that space. And so can you go to those places where you actually go to the imaginal world knowing rationally it's not real, but still feel safe enough to play there? Or does that feel not safe to you?
I mean, I don't have a problem. Let me reverse it a little bit, or just give it a little bit of a like a spin instead of using Dumbledore or Jesus or Muhammad. My father, like, I could do that. I could have a hypothetical deep talk where my dad's trying to give me wisdom or something. And to give you an example of a real thing I could find myself really doing is like, he's always been a hero in my life. This is a real guy. There's everything in the material world. This is a real person who had real impacts, both positive and negative, in my life, who may want to talk to me. Let's say he's dead and I'm needing therapy or something's going wrong in my life, and I need to hear him tell me, I never meant to do some of those things when I was drunk. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, it may not be literally the case, but I needed to hear it for therapy, whatever. Sure. I don't have a problem with that. I think humans play make believe all the time, and even us rational ones who like to be so intellectually superior, I like to use the term. We're still primates, and we're still emotional creatures. We're still animals, as much as we like to pretend we're robots, and we're really not. And I think that if we stop playing that make-believe game, that we're not primates that evolved on a rock, we've gone too far in the other direction, and we've lost connection to what evolved us to where we're at. We are not beyond the very things that helped us get where we are, in my opinion. But it's finding a way to do it where it's not going to harm. And that's my honest opinion. You know what I mean? So
it seems like we can't seem to, as human nature, find that happy medium. And that place that you're talking about, like that happy medium place, is the place that I like to hang out. But it seems like the overwhelming voices are, no, this is capital R real. Like, I talked to God and he talked back, therefore my religion is true, or whatever. And then on the other side, you get people like Richard Dawkins, who, like, I remember there was one time Jordan Peterson was like, have you ever like wrestled with dragons in your life? And he's like, no, dragons aren't real. You know what I mean? And like, you know what Jordan Peterson was trying to do, because he's all into the myth and all of that. And so
but that's a rare time to understand what Jordan Peterson's really trying to say. You know what I mean? Like,
I know. I know. Jordan goes too far for me. And I have a whole thing about that. I think actually he's talked about it before. He has a really deep fear of nihilism. He has a lot of demons. I mean, there's a reason that he struggles sometimes with addiction. His fear of nihilism means that the myths, he really needs to ground them in reality. Whereas for me, I can take he has some great lectures on myths that I think are really interesting, but he has to make it real. And I think that's because he's said before, he has a really deep fear of nihilism. So he needs it grounded. Whereas I've faced those fears a little bit more directly. So I don't need those myths to be real to get value from it. But that's a whole other day.
Yeah, I would say, like, my only complaint, and I haven't like gone through serious lectures of his work. It's unfortunate someone has to struggle. I know what addiction's like, and I empathize with every human who ever has to go through that hell. Now, that's a real hell. I know, because I've been there. And it's not fictional. But Jordan, my complaint is the very thing he attacks everyone else, postmodernism, all this stuff, like his interpretations of many of these myths, like he finds things like he could bring this bottled water and probably like find mystical, esoteric, meta narratives and stuff within the narrative of this bottle of water. And I'm like, I feel like you're right. He's so allergic to nihilism that he's like willing to find any meaning in anything. See that bird shit on the fence? Let me tell you how salvific that bird shit is. And it's like, what just happened? You know what I mean? Like, anyway, I'm just being, I don't want to be too jabby. I know that he's a human like we all are, but like, I feel like
I do have to recognize, like, in my work, because I work with nihilists a lot, he has helped people. He has helped people recover from nihilism. Like his 12, whenever you're in too much chaos, and you know this as an addict better than I do, whenever you're in too much chaos, any system of order is good for you, because when you have all the power and control, it's not working out so great for you. So when you're in complete chaos and disorder, something structured and something grounded, more like what Jordan Peterson was trying to do, his 12 rules for life, can really actually help you. Like, there's people that have been helped, and I want to acknowledge that. But for me, it's like, I want all those tools, and I don't want to have to believe that it's, capital T true, which is where, I diverge with him. But anyway, it seems like that seems to be our option, though, of just like, it's either really true or it's bullshit, and we don't do that. And whenever I get an atheist who's like, I can't go there, you can tell that they've got a little bit identity. Like you said the word superior. There is that part of atheism and religious deconstruction that, like, I'm so superior to magical thinking that even if you show me the science of how this is good for you and how you can, work in these spaces, I'm not going to do it. that means that there's either a lot of pain there that we still need to work through, or you've wrapped your identity around this feeling of being superior, like you are more logical than everyone else, and so you don't ever play this imaginal space. Either way, I think there's work to be done. But yeah, that place in between where you can play in some of these places, in myth, in religion, learning about what religion does for us psychologically, getting the benefits without the dogmas, that seems to be where you get the best bang for your buck, and it seems to be a place where we both ended up.
I like the way you worded that, because I think I told you I was having panic attacks 4 or 5 months back. I don't know if I went into great depth about it, but
Yeah.
I was having a lot of panic attacks, and it was very humbling for me to be forced to have to go to the doctors and for them to give me medications that are narcotic in order to calm me down, to help me out. And I did not like that, because it's a scary place to go. My past, I'm 10 years off of heroin, almost 11 years off heroin. But then a buddy of mine was like, listen, would you try some psilocybin? And I'm like, I've done mushrooms in the past when I was young, more recreationally, but I remember it takes you into a world inside yourself that, you lose. The best way I would describe it is like you lose control. It controls, like it's super potent. And I remember a little bit like, damn, you're about to go on a ride and you're going to have to just be on the ride. You cannot escape this ride. You're just going to have to face the ride and do the ride. And I was telling him, I'm like, maybe I'll get over this little fear and actually have a sincere therapeutic situation where I really do take a higher dose.
Some people do. Yeah, some people do.
Yeah.
How did it go for you?
Well, I didn't do the higher dose yet. I did take a micro dose just to kind of calm me, because it worked similar to, what would calm people who have anxiety or panic and things like that. And it was calming. So I'm like, okay, I saw some kind of results there. But I'm a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie, but I'm willing to potentially do something like that and see what kind of work could be done, because that I know from experience from the past. It's just been 20 years, the kinds of places it can take you to think and to go through. And it's not something you could do without like extreme either meditation, which I don't know. I've never meditated to get to that kind of place, but like, I don't know how to soberly, and I say soberly meaning not ingest something, and get to that level of internal cognitive working. But I am willing to play into those, and it still could be explainable without going down the Joe Rogan sphere of acting like, no, dude, like that's the real realm, and like this is the fake world, and like you don't have to go
You're
down.
so right. Yeah, that shows up in that world too, where like you do psychedelics thinking like this is just happening at the level of the brain, and then like you meet, I don't know, like on DMT, people meet the blue lady, or or you see space elves, or there's certain similarities sometimes in trips, and then people will start thinking, oh, this is reality. There was a guy that I used to have who now is just totally lost. He believes that there's like 16 realms of reality, and he travels through them, and he's gone essentially. Like we lost him, he's gone. And it is this tendency that like the brain wants to latch on to something. And it's one of the benefits for me of being ex-Mormon is I can recognize it. And I was so like with Mormonism, like I was so wrong that I just have this skepticism built in now that I can play in these spaces without getting sucked in. But it's hard. Like we need a lot of guidance in this space to be able to help people to use these tools without getting sucked into some kind of dogmatic, fundamentalist, culty, mushroom cult kind of place, because that's what the brain will tend to do unless you put guardrails there. And this is why I don't like when atheists say like we're born atheists. It's like, yeah, that may be true, but we're also born superstitious, and we're born with biases. We're born with cognitive biases. We're born with magical thinking built in. So unless you have guardrails to that, you are going to get sucked into one of these things. Unless you have those guardrails from education or experience, or often if you're neurodivergent, some of those things don't hit the same. So for example, if you're autistic, you're less likely to believe whatever your religion was saying at the time. There seems to be, if you're neurodivergent, you can avoid some of that. But yeah, for a neurotypical human brain, unless you have guardrails, like, you're gonna go down and think that it's real.
Yeah. I love this stuff. I love these topics.
I'm really curious to see a high dose for you, what that would happen, because it tends to be very, I mean, the data tends to be really good for addiction, for processing, for the anxiety and the panic attacks that you're having. I would really hope that you could have a really good experience with that, but it's hard. I usually have bad trips, hard trips. I'm neurotic by nature. I go to very hard places. But I do it once or twice a year for one for depression. I've been able to not have to take drugs for depression. I've had depression since puberty. So I've been able to stay off those. And then also just like for the inner work, just checking in with what's going on underneath the surface. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what happened with you, because it tends to be a way to just rewire and get some new neural pathways there so that you're not stuck in an addiction.
Yeah, I'm not addicted to anything.
Yeah, anymore. You're not addicted now.
Yeah.
But there's still some anxiety happening there, and there's still
I mean, clearly when you've gone down and lost control, where you're looking at your own reflection in a spoon, wondering how you got here, that's a dark hole. And I went down I feel like I experienced nihilism in addiction, and said, hell no, I don't ever want to go back to that dark place. So I'm very careful, and my brain and my gut tells me cautious. The anxiety stuff is separate from that. This was due to bought a new house. My brother, I was helping my brother get off of fentanyl and methamphetamine. He was doing both, and he was mainlining them. And I mean, and he's living at the house, and I'm finding out, I'm trying to help him get clean. I'm finding out one of my teenagers dabbling with stuff with him. And then all these bills, like, it just life on life. And I didn't know how to breathe. I was starting to get so I went to the doctors, then they tried to put me on an SSRI. I tried to do that for 6 days. Every time I did, my jaw was wiry. I didn't feel right. I was like, yo, I'm not liking this. So they prescribed me something at my primary care to help me in case I need something to help me calm down. And I haven't had, I'm doing so much better now. Like, I'm in a way better space. However, I just kind of want to, at some point, really, under the right environment with the right people, professionals, actually go in and see if I can't enhance or improve my life beyond where it's at even now, and work through some things that I may not even realize that, might still be there. Because I mean, my God, there's a reason someone gets hooked on, drugs for 10 years, there's a reason.
Right.
I have a lot of trauma, I'm sure I don't even realize,
Yeah, I'd be curious what came up for you. Well, we can talk off air, but in the Boise area up here, I know some fantastic people who make a good bowl of mushroom soup. But we can talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk.
I am curious about your thoughts on because you've had now going way back to when you were a believer and possibly believed in hell, and then, addiction and how that plays into that. Is your gut feeling that, if you find Jesus when you're in recovery and AA is working for you and keeping you sober, do you not recommend that person deconstruct because of the possible fallout into losing your sobriety?
Look, I can't speak for every human being on earth. My story is AA was a gateway. Okay, is the best way I would like to describe it, because when you enter an AA or an NA or a CA or whatever the other the 12 steps groups, what you find is a diversity of people who have their own higher power. And you'll find they all have a different higher power. Some of them actually believe in other gods or have different beliefs. And they say, hey, I'm 5 years sober. And you're like, how does this person with a different higher power have power to get clean? And so
interesting.
It was logical for me to go, why is it there are 80 people in this room? Half of them believe in Jesus. 20 of them out of the rest, like a quarter of them, believe in some whatever, and it's not attached to the Bible. 5 of them are Wiccans. 3 of them are Satanists. 2 of them are atheists in an AA group calling their higher power. And they're like, well, I call my higher power God. Group of drunks. I don't believe in any mystical thing out there. And I'm like, dude, how is it 80 people are here getting sober and they're all getting the same conclusions under different powers? You see what I'm saying, right? Like, so
yeah, interesting. So it was part of your deconstruction.
I would say
go ahead.
No, you
I would say that's not, in my experience, not common.
Okay.
I would say that just in the sense that people will see that it's working for people and assume that like the common thing that I say is like, we're all working with our higher power. We may have like a different image of what that looks like for us, but we're all working with the same thing here. You know, you get that universalism kind of vibe that from AA that can kind of hold on to faith in this universalist kind of source, God's behind all the religions kind of thing. I tend to get more of that story, but it's interesting for you that it was something a little bit more destabilizing in the sense that like we can't all be right.
Well, I think that's what happened, was that God became, for me, through my perception, was like, how is it all of these people say a different name, have a different name for that God, believe different things, and yet still get the same conclusions? Yet I've been going to church for over a decade and I can't stay sober in Christian churches. Like Jesus isn't doing it for me. And so like and then I think the other thing is this: if someone becomes a Christian in addiction, I would almost guarantee you they don't really study Bible, like theologically. They don't really dive to dissect and understand words and go into the depths of the text, because if they did, there's some clear text to indicate as a child of God, you can ask God for things. You can ask your father for bread. Will he give you a stone? No, he'll give you bread. You can actually interact with this deity. And when for 10 years you're struggling, begging this God to do something, when you're really like, you don't know, you're giving it all you can, at some point you go, this isn't working. The power of the pneuma, the spirit that's supposed to help change and cause me to not be going down this dark path that I'm stuck on, and I'm begging you to stop letting me be tortured by this. Yeah. I mean, you know, so in my mind, I'm like, am I his? I'm like, am I your child? So I just think that like, I feel like once I started to get clean, and I was still praying to God when I first got sober. I used sober to be for heroin. I was clean. I was using the word God. I imagine some of my cultural background from Bible were coming into this, but it was much broader. It wasn't so fundamentalist. And noticing maybe God is behind whatever we call God, is behind all the world religions. My life improved so significantly when God wasn't this thing constantly hovering over my mind, over my thoughts, over my deeds, over my flesh, over my I am wicked. I am evil in the sight of this holy God. And if it weren't for you being so righteous and good inside of me, then, you know, I'm nothing but dung. Like that's the perception you get, is to die is to gain and to live is to die. You see this, take up your cross, follow me. There's like this death fetish that comes within the text. And I read that very carefully and I did not know how to reconcile this shit. So I feel like a healthy Christian, I'll say, that found Jesus getting clean is likely one who does not really obsess over studying the Bible, because if they actually study the Bible, they're going to run into some problems. And I would encourage that person to realize like, yo, don't get attached to the book. If you're just going to be this like naive child of God and like, I love God. No, bro, I love you too. It's all good. Give me hugs. Have a nice life. And it's like, yeah, so what is Colossians 3 or, you know, Colossians 1 verse, and they're like, I don't know. I don't really, it doesn't matter because God is love, bro. And I just love you. And it's like, he helped me with getting clean. Okay. Keep that. If you want to stay nice, keep that. But
if that's what keeps you like from, you know, just dying on the street in front of us with an overdose, and that's the thing that keeps you to be nice to people, keep it. keep it.
Anything, actually. I'll also take it a step further because I think maybe I missed your question a little bit here. In case now I picked up something in what you just said is this. I encourage any human anywhere that is suffering through such a horrific experience as addiction to find whatever philosophy, as long as it's not harming themselves and others, in order to have an improved life and not die or self-destruct. I encourage any human being as an atheist to find whatever philosophy that is. I would just say, if they're having an intellectual conversation with me, I would just say, just so you know, it does not have to be Jesus. Like, I'm going to be very frank with you. My experience is evidence. Almost 11 years off heroin, I have overcome all sorts of shit sober. And the traumas that we've experienced in life, all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to get into it on air. It's personal life stuff, but I will say I've overcome all of it without having to take substances, without having a relapse. And life has been amazing. It has been amazing. So that would be my testimony.
It's
you know what I mean?
scary to advise someone who's an addict, because it's like, if they find Jesus, that's the love piece that they needed to get some self-love, to be able to get some help or whatever. You don't want to take that. But then also on the other hand, I'm scared of like someone like my brother. He's an addict and currently an active Mormon. And it's like, I struggle because on the one hand, it really helped him a lot. It gave him a lot of order and structure that he really needed. And on the other hand, if he even glanced at the history and that foundation fell for him, then he's so at risk. Whereas you are in a place where you're much more, your sobriety is a lot more grounded, in the sense that if you learn something new, you don't automatically lose your entire foundation and now you're at, risk for losing sobriety. And so it's this tenuous place that you want to help them. But if you build on that foundation and that foundation falls in your back where you started, and it's a tough one.
Well, if I may, God, this is in the weeds, and maybe you'll understand me. Oh my God, you're touching on something so deep. And I hope someone watching can maybe relate, or just, and this is, I think, true for your brother. And I'm sorry that he's going through that. My brother's going through the same struggle. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him in months. But the best way I can, in human language, make sense of this for us is that I found myself, and I loved myself. I finally said to myself, I had that conversation you were talking about with God. But I found out it wasn't God. It was me. And when I realized it was me, I knew that I was good. I knew that it was me that was all along the one that had love, the one that cared, the one that deserved love, the one that deserved good, the one that, and when I saw all of that, like a mirror in front of me, like inner work, through the struggles of life that I went through, and I want to say getting away from the addiction, and some of these interesting little parables. May I tell you one that really caught my attention?
Yeah, please.
Okay. It's not in a holy book, but it uses terminology that I think people can maybe relate to. God goes to make man, okay? And the devil overhears it. And God says, man will be, and I mean man generically of all humankind, okay? The devil hears and says, or God says, man will be ambitious, man will be intelligent, loving, compassionate, driven, motivated, all sorts of attributes given to man. It would be like me. And the devil goes, I gotta hide God from man so that he'll never find him. I'm gonna hide God under the mountains of the earth, beneath the rocks, beneath the dirt. Man will never find him there. And he's pondering. Well, he'll be intelligent, inquisitive, motivated, driven. They'll find a way to remove the rock and the dirt and get underneath the mountains and find God. I can't hide God there. I got it. I'll hide God beneath the oceans, underneath the sand of the sea. You'll never find him. Man is ambitious, driven, intelligent, motivated. Every attribute that God is. He'll find an apparatus to sweep away the sands of the sea, to go beneath the water and discover God. I can't hide God there. So then it was like, okay. He thinks long and hard and goes, I got it. I really have it this time. I will hide God inside of every individual who ever comes to exist. They will spend their whole life dedicated, devoted, intelligently seeking and searching and looking and finding and doing everything they can to find God, and never just stop and look inside and say, it's me. And when I heard that, I was like, it's you. Like, it's you. It's your consciousness. It's you all along. And with me, because I started noticing science, I started looking at things along the way, I started to go, you know what? You could call this a mythology of my own. The mythology of my own. And they'll go, oh, you made yourself to be God, Derek. Whatever you want to say, mock and scoff. I'm not, let me put my throne above the on Mount Zaphon, above the heights of God. You know, come on. Like, no, I'm saying that finding myself psychologically is my bedrock, and you can't fuck with it. You can't fuck with this bedrock. This bedrock is unshakable. And when I found that, I'll tell you, like, it was like being born again in a way, but like, none of the dogma, none of the stigma, none of the bullshit.
And also like less time doing mental gymnastics, right? To try to make your beliefs work so that you can hold on to this feeling that you're valuable, or that, you know, holding on to the mystery of God. You don't have to do all those mental gymnastics too. That's really beautiful. And it goes to really what is the magic to me of being on this side of things is every time that I said a prayer and an idea popped into my head, that was me. Every time that I did something good and it was good and nobody saw, it was me. I did that thing, you know, and making a projection in my brain of God so that I could see myself from different eyes and see that I was worthy of love. So I didn't give up on myself when, you know, my own life, my own shit. That was my own brain too, that created that projection that could find a way to love itself. And that's when you get into the magic of it, of like, oh, the magic and the mystery, it's been in here the whole time. And that's when everything becomes really interesting and exciting again, rather than, you know, at first it was grief for me because I felt like I had lost that. But when I realized it was me the whole time, I kind of got everything that I got out of God, you know, before, is so much stronger now because it comes from me, for me. And you're right. It feels a lot more unshakable, whereas previous places I've been with my faith were very shakeable. I changed. I would learn new things and it would be devastating to me. And I would like have an existential crisis because what do I even believe anymore? And I don't have that anymore because it's not built on truth claims. It's built from the inside out. And so I hope somebody that weeds that we just went off to in the end there, I hope somebody can resonate with that and feel some comfort with that and some magic again, that like, even though maybe God's not coming to save us, there's still something really beautiful about witnessing yourself.
I agree. And I think that's why Elaine Pagels loves me so much. What a sweet, sweet woman. If you don't, I mean, this is why I don't close the door as like, oh, you're a part of my tribe or you're not. As a human being, these are words. These are we've created constructs and divisions between people. And Elaine Pagels knows I'm Darwinian in my thinking and very skeptical and very naturalist. She knows that. And yet when I explain to her that psychological experience that I think is psychological, she thinks a little more, right? She's more metaphysical. She turns to me, she goes, Derek, I'm reminded of the Gospel of Thomas. You were bringing up Thomas earlier, right? And she's like, I'm reminded of the Gospel of Thomas, and some of the deepest sayings you find, the teachings in it is that it's not about what you believe. It's not about what you don't believe. There's something more about just intrinsically it's in you, that you had it all along, and that Jesus is almost like a meme in the story of you. And in this mystical Gnostic-y style material, wherever I am, there you are, right? And that Thomas Didymus, his twin, is kind of you, the reader. And so anyway, it's this esoteric way of like engaging the material. And she's like, you're a mystical atheist or a mystical kind of like skeptic. And I take mystical not to literally mean metaphysically something is there, but like we're playing, we know
100%.
enough. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
100%. I'm happy calling myself a mystical atheist, and it definitely changes the way that you go back to text. So when I was younger, I was looking for like capital T truths in these texts, like historical truths and what the doctrine is and all of that. And once you have that shift that you're talking about, where you're in the land of mysticism here, it really changes how you go back to text. So, for example, like the Good Samaritan story, like in Christianity, that's often a story told to like, oh, your wayward children, like, they'll hopefully come back to you someday. And it's almost like this manipulation. But when you do it from a mystic perspective, you are, and I do this when I read parables with Christian mystics, is this reading of you are all the characters. So you are the father and you're the wayward son, and you're also the elder son. And the elder son is kind of like your ego, like I'm showing up every day. I always, make sure that I look good and everything's done and I'm responsible, and wanting some glory for that too. And then there's the way where son likes to push boundaries. And then there's this father piece of like, I can hold space. I can hold space for all of these selves within me. I can embrace both, right? And it just like completely changes when you go back to the text, and when you start to do it from the mystical place of I am all the characters. What does this reveal about me? And that's when scripture takes on a whole new journey. And so I'm an atheist in the sense that I'm very skeptical, and reasons for that. But I can read scripture with these Christian mystics and have a really life-changing experience. Like working with the Good Samaritan parable changed me fundamentally as a person to this day. And that's where a Christian will be like, ha, it's true. And it's like, no, it's pointing us to something deeper. Like this is a story. This is how many humans were involved in creating the Bible, thousands of people. And you can work with these stories that were, for whatever reason, these stories were captivating enough to be passed from campfire to campfire for thousands of years, because there's something interesting in them. There's something we recognize in these mirrors. And that's when we go back to scripture in this whole new way. And so for me, my experience of people who do Jesus that way, which I love any person who's doing Jesus like that, is that you almost have to leave Christianity and kind of leave it for a time and leave your tradition and explore some of the psychology or other wisdom teachers or other religions. And then when you come back to Jesus, you can see him in this whole new light and almost a new appreciation, separate from kind of the Jesus and the hell, going back to our point of this podcast, going back to the Jesus and hell that maybe we were given. And that's a beautiful, that kind of circle, that loop is just a beautiful journey that I've seen many people take, myself included.
I would add to it too, is that, we know these stories. I mean, we grew up on them.
Yeah.
Whereas the other thing is when you go to leave, you find out other stories. And I don't want to be a Bible supremacist, as if like, oh, this is the only one that has these kinds of stories. It's a cultural thing that we grew up on. But like, I'm going to tell you, I know the Odyssey can be pretty ruthless, but I love the Odyssey.
Are you looking forward to the movie?
Oh yeah. I don't
Christopher
care.
Nolan.
Look,
epic.
I'm not so much of a nerd in this that like I'm gonna be mad if his helmet doesn't look like a Mycenaean helmet or something. Like I'm okay with a modern reimagination, but like it better hit, because I've read this story and I'll tell you, I cried at the end of this story, and I still do.
Yeah. Even with someone in the chat mentioned Dante's Divine Comedy. And like, on the one hand, it did a lot of damage because it gave us a lot of our imagery for hell that we started to take literal. But I read that text with a mystic teacher where like, we know this isn't real. This is like what is happening at the level, like in your soul space, with these sins, and going from heaven to, going from hell, and then going through the levels, and then going to purgatory and going to heaven. It's a journey, and I would weep in class sometimes. It changed my life. Very beautiful. But we miss the point when it's like, when it gives us all this imagery that we then, are afraid of, when it was never supposed to be the way. Anyway, I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, someone mentioned that. So for the Odyssey, the only thing I'm afraid of is, I like you, like my life is deeply affected by epic stories. Les Mis is a story that really changed my life in many ways. And I'm really excited for the Odyssey. I'm excited for that to become kind of part of our cultural conversation. The thing that I'm scared of is there are translations. In a lot of the earlier translations, they really did women dirty, that women are either like on a pedestal, or they are, you know, like the siren who's going to destroy you. And there's not a lot of in between, not a lot of complexity. And but the original story had a lot of female complexity that they ended up translating out over the years, as happens, you know, with ancient texts. And so I hope that they don't do women. I hope that the female characters are three-dimensional, because it would be sad if we use some of these translations that really make them one-dimensional characters. So that's the only thing I'm afraid of, because that's just such like a, oh, I hope you don't do us dirty there. Yeah, I mean, but I'm really excited.
You get the same problem with the Bible. I mean, and there are some really like not so good favorable stories, New and Old Testament, and you know, clearly for women. And so I totally feel what you're saying. I mean, there is a theme. Keep in mind, this is an ancient text. I mean, this is early Iron Age, so it's going to reflect ideals, things that were like, nope, not cool. We're not into that. For example, Agamemnon's wife was unfaithful. So here's a woman who's not being loyal to her husband, who's a king while he's abroad. But Penelope, at every turn, while the suitors want her, she is the exemplar woman of being faithful to one man, even if she thinks he could be dead, but has hope that he's not. And like I get out of it what I think is useful and really enjoy, and I can see when I'm like, that's horseshit. Okay, like that's not good. And based on our modern ethical systems here, but we got some super chats. But I there was
let's do the super chats.
Yeah, there was one thing I was thinking about, and I think I just lost it. It was something really good. I felt like it was going to be really good. But either way, we'll keep letting the muse control us here.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait a minute. What? Sorry it took so long to get to these super chats. We're working on them now. How do you cope after deconverting when your spouse uses religious content to shame or scare you because you no longer believe the same?
Yeah, it's a really complex question. Mixed faith marriage is something that I do work with. I don't do, because I'm not a therapist, like I won't touch like sex therapy or things, other parts of the relationship. But when it's just the belief space, there are times that I work with religious deconstruction. And what the deconverting spouse needs to realize is that what you did brings up a lot of fear in your partner. And so you deconstructing has really brought that up. And so the only way that they can sometimes manage that is say like, hey, don't you think you're going to hell for this or whatever? And it's not really a reflection on you. And it's hard not to take it that way. But what they're really saying is, where you're going brings me a lot of fear. And I don't know how to handle this fear. And my only way to be able to work with this fear is to be able to just say, let's go back to the way things were. Like, let's go back to, we're both religious, we're both going to heaven, and then I don't have to feel this fear anymore. And so what you should be hearing when your person says that, when your partner says that, even though it may be super offensive and they really shouldn't, and any therapist would tell them to stop because it's just not appropriate for if you're wanting a healthy relationship. But what they're really saying is, you're really scaring me. And I'm losing you, and I don't know how to work with these fears. And so what the deconverting spouse can do a lot of to help alleviate your partner's fears is to not combat their beliefs directly, and still go to that place of shared values of, hey, I don't believe this hell narrative that you're telling me, but I do believe, I do believe in being a good person, and these things that have these core values that we have in common, I still believe with you. It's just a little bit different. And if you can get that common language with your partner, rather than saying your beliefs are crazy, you can actually calm down their fear, and then you can connect human to human. And if you can connect human to human, even with different beliefs, you have a chance that the relationship can make it. If you can't get down to that human to human level, and you're only just debating beliefs, the relationship, the data shows is going to break down. And so what you have to hear is, I see that you're afraid. I see this is really scary for you. I'm going to reassure you by saying, I have different beliefs than you, but here are my shared values. I'm committed to you. These are the things that are the same. I'm not gonna, there's this fear that it's gonna be like deconversion, boom, 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 heroin addict. I'm not going down that way. This is what spirituality looks like to me now. I support you going to church. Will you support me on my nature walk on Sunday? And if you can do that, and allow that fear response to kind of go down in your partner, then you have an opportunity for connection. And if you have an opportunity for connection, there's still a bedrock foundation in the relationship, even though your beliefs are different. It requires differentiation. It's painful for both partners. It's lonely for both partners, but it is entirely possible. Me personally, I was in a mixed faith marriage for a number of years. My husband is now completely stepped away. But when it started really getting healthy for us is when I could finally give them a lot of reassurance and order myself a little bit, instead of just being like just this chaos that just brought up a lot of fear and walls in my partner. And once I could do that, we reconnected, and he was able to, in this case, let go of attending church. So it's a tough one. Just try to see that they're afraid and do things to try to connect with them underneath that fear by bringing down their fear response, by doing a lot of reassurance and shared values and the shared things that you have that are not just being the same person. Because religion will teach you, we get married and we're going to be the same person. You're going to take my name. We're going to have the same beliefs. We're going to the same place. We're going to raise our children the same. And that's enmeshment. It only works when you're the same. And so what you're now transitioning to is a relationship that can hold two different people. And it's hard and it's painful, but it's a really beautiful process if you both still love each other and want to transition your relationship into that.
Wow. Well said. Great advice. Thank you. S Mill still, thank you so much for being here. Been here for a long time and super chatting. Dawkins and company are frustrated people are moving to New Age and pagan instead of atheism. Do you agree with them, or the pagan New Age theists are fine?
Yeah. Yes and no. So I would say, is New Age and paganism, especially when we talk about paganism, is it categorically less dangerous than what we're seeing from fundamentalist forms of Christianity and Islam? Yes. Like, it is going to be like women gathering together on Halloween in their clothes, doing a ritual with a cauldron to let things go. It's not inherently as harmful as other things that religions do. So I do give them that point. I think what the Dawkins and company are frustrated by is there was the sense that, like, hey, we're deconstructing and we're going to build a secular society built on human well-being, and we're going to solve modern problems with modern solutions, with modern conversation. That's where we're going. And they got frustrated when what really happened, and what happens with human nature, is you leave one religion, but if you don't do that really deep work with your biases and your fears, and some of these things that you just psychologically need, you're just going to find yourself in a new religion. And that can be all kinds of things. That can be fandoms, that can be wellness culture, can turn into a religion for you. It can be New Age manifesting bullshit. Oprah said something the other day that made me want to blow my brains out. She was like, the reason that I'm so successful is because I put out what I put out into the universe responds to. So she doesn't have to do any thinking about what it is like to be an ethical billionaire because of her New Age manifestation, the secret beliefs. She just believes that, like, the universe rewarded her for her effort and her frequency and all of that bullshit. And so, like, I think the Dawkins company are really frustrated that, like, hey guys, I thought we were going to build a secular, rational society built on human well-being, and now we can't even talk about ethical billionaires because we believe that the universe gave this all to her. Like, we lost the plot here. And I can understand that frustration that we kind of thought we were going somewhere, and some of the New Age stuff just became religion in a new, and especially spiritual bypassing, just in a new container. Light language is the new speaking in tongues, and all the bullshit that happens in religion is now happening in the New Age space. So this, to me, just goes to show that we have more work to do. There's more work to do in deconstruction than just leaving a religion. That was the easy work. The hard work is what we've said multiple times is understanding why we co-evolved with religion and building something better in its place, and also being aware of how the brain works, how the brain cults, how our cognitive biases work, so that we don't get sucked into whatever the new religion of the day is, because that tends to be what we're doing. Is religion never really goes away. One dies and one replaces it. And so I can sense the frustration, but I still think I get a little grace here because women have been under patriarchal religion for so long that if they're leaving and going to paganism, and doing a lot of inner work with that, I tend to give that a lot of grace. It tends to be less harmful than what they're coming from, but there is cause for concern that, like, how can we build this society built on human well-being if most of you are still looking at microwaves for angel numbers, and you're still, you're still just like not here solving the problem because, whatever you're doing in your new age manifestation land or whatever. I've had people on TikTok literally tell me, like, homeless people wouldn't be homeless if they could manifest. And it's like, well, now we were supposed to be building a secular society that could reduce homelessness and solve problems, but we can't do that because you believe that they didn't know how to manifest. So it's a problem, but, to me, not as big of a problem as what we're seeing with Christian nationalism and what we're seeing with fundamentalist Islam. So yes and no for me.
Harm reduction.
Reduction.
Yeah. Yeah. Part 2 to this is when one of them was asked what Jesus should have given us when he was here was a printing press. Same question.
When one of like the new atheists, is that what he's saying?
I suspect it's the same questioner that when they were asked, what should Jesus have given us when he was here was a printing press, or, like they're what should Jesus have given us? Yeah.
Yeah. I like that answer. I mean, it's snarky, but I like that answer for this reason. If really the purpose of what the hell is going on here on this planet was going to be given to us by Jesus, he should have fucking wrote something down, or somebody he knew should have been writing something down. So for me, like, if Jesus was the plan and Jesus could not be bothered to write anything down, and he's God's mouthpiece, that's a problem. And so I like that answer. Not the printing press specifically, but pick up a pen, just pick up a quill or whatever, whatever it was. You should have written something down if this was the message from God, because what we have is people decades later with contradictory stories and a big old mess. There's literally more eyewitness evidence for Mormonism than there is for Christianity.
Yeah, and I know a lot of that. It's kind of funny because even if you picked up a pen, I could be critical of that, because it's like, so what? He wrote something down.
Yeah, but it'd be something.
At
least you could examine it. Hey, does this sound like somebody who's talking to God? Is there something here that's whoa, a human couldn't have done that, or a human couldn't have written that, or that's really amazing, or whatever. Yeah. At least it would give us something to work with,
Yeah, I think my only complaint about of the whole idea, and I get what you're saying, but the only complaint of the whole idea I would have is if this guy's walking on water and he could do all of these miraculous things, you would think he would have left something that was so obviously not repeatable, not something that we could ever, as if God could come up with something that's you cannot outdo this. Not stories that circulate that look similar to stories that already are circulating, or
why would God do the same storyline he's done, that the Egyptians do, like you said, and why? Yeah, it's just it's not a great system. And I can hear people in the comments this is where you're supposed to have faith, but the question that I struggled with the entire time I was a believer is, why is faith a moral virtue? Why is faith why does God value faith more than love or compassion or being a good person? It is hard enough on this planet to be a good person. I am going through something right now, a conflict where it is really hard to just be a good person, even though I don't even know, what's going on with reality. It's hard enough to be a good person. Why is faith in the correct, unbelievable story a moral virtue. It doesn't make any sense at all. It makes more sense that this is the psychological way that we just turn off cognitive dissonance. Oh, we just have to have faith, and now the thinking is done, right? That makes a lot more sense, because there's no reason why, like, there's all these other stories. To me, it's like when the analogy that I use is, it feels like God dropped us off into Skid Row because somebody ate an apple and dropped us all off in Skid Row, and there's all this writing on the walls, and we're supposed to find the one that was true, even though there's like lots of different writing or whatever, and faith in the correct writing on one of these walls was going to be correct, and it's just like this shit show. Like, that was the plan. Like, that's the plan. And like, he's still a good parent. Like, in what ways is that being a good parent? And if you get it wrong, like, it's like eternal torture. It's just so, it's weird. Yeah. But I'm saying this now from more of an outside perspective, but when I was in it, I was trying to make it work. And why was I trying to make all of that work rationally and creating? I had all of these theological, ways that I could have just combated myself right there. I was doing it. Why? Because emotionally, I benefited from belief, both psychologically and socially. And that's why my brain was doing it. Right.
Exactly.
Anyway.
No, this is fantastic. Sorry I took you off the rabbit trail here. DJ Wilkins back again. Great, insightful discussion. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I think Britt is brilliant. Ricky Johnson 7591. Thank you so much for the super chat. Fantastic discussion. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you. We are caught up here. I have a joke real quick, and I'm going to probably butcher it trying to tell you. It's about hell. I heard it from Dennis McDonald a while back, so if someone else hasn't heard it, a modern Protestant dies, and he comes to the pearly gates, and Peter's there, and he says, hey, you're on the list to go to hell. So he's like, what? Hold on. No. What are you talking about? So he ends up going into hell, and he's like talking with Satan. He's like, hey, what's going on at the front desk? And hey, why am I in hell? And he goes, well, hold on, chill out. A lot of people complain about this. They say they don't deserve to be here. And he's like, yeah, I don't. I definitely do not deserve to be here. I'm a strong believer in Jesus. He's my Lord and Savior. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you better check the list again. He goes, hey, sometimes errors happen. I'm going to call the guy upstairs. Give me a few moments. Go stand over there in the waiting area. And like, you know what I mean? We'll get this figured out. If you don't belong here, you'll go back to heaven and get to hang out in the mansions and the pearly gates and all that. So he's hanging out, and he notices someone who looks recognizable by icons that he has seen. And he's like, hold on. Is that Martin Luther in hell? He sees Martin Luther. So he walks up to him, Martin Luther, the German reformer, is that you? And he's like, yeah. And he speaks in German, and he speaks to him. He goes, yes. He goes, what in the world are you doing here? And as he's about to explain, then he realizes, oh my God, that looks like Augustine. So then he turns, he's like, Augustine, is that you? And he says something in Latin. Holy crap, it's Augustine. And then he's about to explain why he's here. Then he turns and he sees the Apostle Paul. And he's like, what the hell are you all doing here? And Paul says, it was works-based salvation all along.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, I like it. All right.
I love it. Yeah.
2 hours, man, that 2 hours flew by. That was so great. All right, I'll leave you with one of my jokes, one of my religious jokes. Okay.
Please.
It's really short. A priest and a mom and a rabbit enter a bar. The rabbit says, I think I'm a typo.
Yeah, I think then what?
I think I'm a typo. I think one of us is a typo because he's a rabbit.
Oh my God.
I saw that one the other day and I was like,
funny.
That's clever. That's cute. That's not my best.
That's funny though. That's funny. Look, I really appreciate you coming on. Any final words from you while I show your website? I hope people will go check it out.
Yeah, if you were here for this video specifically because you're one of those people who has fear of hell, I have one video on my YouTube channel about the history of hell. I go through all that. And I have one long video on the emotional side of overcoming hell and practices that you can do with that. This was like a very condensed version of that. So if you are stuck in this place and want to dive into more, check out my own YouTube channel and I go into that more in depth. And there's a lot of really my YouTube channel is things that I seem to do often with clients. Where I just want to make a video so I can send it to them. Oh, I got a little Ben-Hur clip in there. Did you ever see that movie, Ben-Hur?
No.
Oh, it's such a classic. Oh, it's such a good movie.
I need to.
It's an old one. It's one of the few movies. There was only certain movies we could watch on Sunday. It was like 10 Commandments and Her, Sound of Music. And so I just like know them really well. But anyway, so if you're in that place, I got you. It's something that you can definitely recover from, and you might find other things on the YouTube channel. It's common, just common things that I go through with clients as someone who does spiritual direction and religious deconstruction coaching.
I hope everybody watching on MythVision will go subscribe to Brittney's YouTube channel, Britt, as she prefers to be called by friends. And
that's right.
I sincerely appreciate these deep conversations. They're necessary. I think they help people on both sides find freedom. And I say that to those who've deconverted even might be like, oh, wait, hold on. We don't have to be so like, stuck in a box and not being willing to have these conversations. But yeah, there's so much more. I feel like we barely scratched the surface on video. No, I kid you not.
We'll do another rabbit hole another day, but just thank you so much for all the work that you do on your channel. There is a tendency sometimes in religious deconstruction spaces to just stay in that kind of superior, making fun of religious space. And I just really appreciate that not only you share your personal story, but you also try to go, to these deeper levels that are sometimes more complex and hard and complicated. And I really just appreciate that you just do that across the board on your channel. It's really needed in this space.
Thank you so much. Subscribe to her, check her out on her websites. She's got all sorts of stuff. Go check her out on TikTok. There's amazing work she's doing. I highly recommend you go get connected with Brittney. And until next time, never forget, we are MythVision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.